Have you ever wondered what would happen if the man who once inspired Captain America returned wearing Tony Stark's face, but none of his humanity? What if the next Avengers conflict isn't built on politics or accords, but on grief, blame, and a devastating accusation that Steve Rogers' peaceful ending in Endgame erased an entire universe? That's where Doom steps in. Imagine Steve returning to a world where he believes he caused no harm, only to learn his final moment with Peggy may have triggered a catastrophic incursion. In Doom's eyes, Steve didn't just change his own timeline, he destroyed Doom's. The haunting twist comes from Doom bearing Tony's face, turning nostalgia into an emotional weapon. Civil War ended friendships and broke trust, but Doomsday challenges the foundation of heroism itself. Doom's rage doesn't originate from politics. It erupts from unbearable loss. His wife and son died as their universe collapsed, and he believes the cause traces back to Steve's choice. For Doom, that endgame dance wasn't beautiful, it was deadly. The time heist created consequences the Avengers never fully understood. Loki, Multiverse of Madness, and TVA records revealed how fragile timelines truly are. Doom interprets the data relentlessly. He sees Steve's return as a temporal rupture, not a branching path, an act that wiped Doom's universe from existence. His grief crystallizes into purpose. The emotional weight deepens because the man Steve faces looks like Tony Stark. Not a variant of the Tony he lost, but a darker reflection molded by multiversal tragedy. Doom's intellect equals Tony's brilliance, but his heart carries none of Tony's compassion. Steve's loyalty to Tony becomes a haunting vulnerability exploited mercilessly by Doom. In the first Civil War, Tony argued for control while Steve defended autonomy. In Doomsday, those ideologies return amplified, stretched across multiversal stakes. Doom demands accountability beyond governments, he demands cosmic responsibility. Steve insists heroes are still human. Doom sees humanity as a weakness. Their philosophies collide with the same emotional force that once fractured the Avengers. Steve's values were shaped by trust broken inside S.H.I.E.L.D. and restored through friendship. But Doom challenges the very foundation of Steve's moral certainty. Doom argues that good intentions still create destructive consequences, and a hero's personal choice shouldn't outweigh billions of lives. It's a brutal claim that shakes Steve's confidence like never before. Endgame's final lake scene redefined Steve's story. Marvel turned it into a heartbreaking epilogue. But Doomsday reframes that peace as the spark of catastrophe. What viewers saw as closure, Doom sees as cosmic negligence. The tender moment where Steve wore a wedding ring becomes, to Doom, a symbol of irreversible devastation. The symmetry with time runs out in the comics becomes unmistakable. There, Steve and Tony fought as universes collapsed around them. In this film, Tony isn't alive to confront Steve. Doom becomes the emotional stand-in, channeling Tony's unresolved fears and guilt. Their dynamic fractures Steve, forcing him to face the ghost of his closest ally. Comic fans know Doom's rivalry usually ties to Reed Richards, but the MCU crafts something emotionally richer by leaning into the Steve-Tony bond. Using RGG to portray Doom isn't simple casting, it's psychological architecture. Audiences instantly feel the history, making Doom's hatred heavier and Steve's struggle painfully intimate. This Doom isn't a traditional tyrant. He's a survivor of cosmic annihilation. His armor blends Stark-level engineering with sorcery. His eyes carry years of trauma. Instead of seeking domination, he seeks restoration of everything he lost. Steve represents the catalyst for that loss, making their confrontation feel tragically personal rather than hero versus villain. We saw universes crumble in Multiverse of Madness, but Doom witnessed something slower and more horrifying. Buildings folded, time fractured, gravity reversed, and his family vanished into collapsing space. Those final images etched themselves into Doom's identity. Every plan he creates in Doomsday emerges from that unbearable memory. TVA archives and surviving fragments of Doom's reality show a consistent timeline rupture tied to Steve's displacement. Whether Doom interprets the data accurately isn't the point. Emotionally, Doom believes it with absolute conviction. Conviction, especially in the MCU, fuels villains more powerfully than logic ever could. The Civil War academic analysis helps explain the deeper parallels. Tony followed centralized control. Steve trusted personal judgment. Doom twists this debate into something grander. He insists heroes must consider multiversal consequences, not personal happiness. Steve argues that denying human emotion turns them into machines. Their conflict isn't tactical, it's philosophical. Civil War II explored similar moral boundaries: predict the future or preserve free will. Doomsday pushes this idea into cosmic ethics. Doom argues timelines shouldn't bend for anyone's emotional closure. Steve argues heroes can pursue love without destroying moral responsibility. Their disagreement isn't about law, it's about the structure of reality itself. Captain America symbolizes hope, but Doom claims Steve's hope, once beautiful, became disastrous. Doom believes Steve's final choice condemned his universe. Hearing this from someone resembling Tony intensifies Steve's guilt. Tony forgave Steve, but Doom embodies the consequences Tony never lived long enough to understand. Their first confrontation is quiet, not explosive. Doom describes the final seconds with his son before the universe collapsed. Steve listens, horrified. It's not a threat, it's a wound being shown. For the first time in years, Steve cannot argue, cannot deflect, cannot reassure. He simply absorbs Doom's grief. Steve once watched Tony suffer under guilt from Ultron and Sokovia. Now Doom represents the nightmare Tony always feared, unintended consequences rippling beyond imagination. Steve, who always believed his choices came from noble intentions, is now forced to consider whether those intentions caused cosmic tragedy. Doom's belief system formed through Latvian order. He values stability above all else. To him, Steve's timeline decision wasn't love, it was chaos. Doom sees himself as a protector whose world died because another man chased happiness. That bitterness drives every action Doom takes, painting Steve as the architect of his suffering. Modern Captain America comics highlight the complexity of Steve and Doom's relationship. Doom respects Steve's symbolism yet opposes his values. The film magnifies that duality. Doom admires Steve's integrity while loathing the consequences of Steve's choices. It creates an emotional tension no other villain has ever held with Captain America. Doom doesn't seek conquest for ego. He wants to rebuild his world through a Battleworld-style reconstruction, but the cosmic anchor required is tied to Steve's displacement. To Doom, reclaiming that anchor is justice, not vengeance. His logic is brutally simple: the man who caused the collapse must help restore what he destroyed. Secret War's influences appear everywhere. Doom once became a godlike ruler over stitched realities. Here, he seeks not worship but recovery. His grief makes him volatile, compassionate in seconds, monstrous in moments. Steve realizes Doom isn't driven by power at all, he's driven by unbearable loss. Steve's internal struggle becomes powerful. Should he defend his endgame choice? Accept Doom's accusation? Offer redemption? The man who always had answers now faces uncertainty. For the first time, Steve considers whether his pursuit of personal peace came at the cost of unimaginable devastation. Doom serves as Steve's emotional shadow, fulfilling the doppelganger theory. He embodies the guilt Steve repressed. Doom speaks with Tony's voice yet delivers Tony's fears as accusations. Fighting Doom means confronting the reflection of Tony Steve never expected to face. Steve spirals between loyalty and grief. Doom echoes Tony's arguments painfully well. Heroes don't get personal happy endings. Consequences outweigh intentions. Someone has to pay the multiversal cost. These phrases terrify Steve as they mirror the criticisms Tony could have made. Every sentence Doom delivers cuts deeper than any weapon. Some heroes begin siding with Doom, not out of loyalty but fear. They wonder whether Steve's choice truly caused catastrophic ripples. Old divisions rise again, mirroring Civil War's ideological fractures. The Avengers don't split over politics this time, they split over moral responsibility across infinite universes. Steve revisits his roots, seeking truth. He studies temporal physics and confronts alternate versions of people he once trusted. Vulnerability becomes his strength again. His willingness to question himself, the same quality that made him great in the first Avenger, becomes the emotional bridge Doomsday stands on. Doom watches Steve struggle. Though consumed by anger, Doom respects Steve's willingness to confront painful truths. Part of Doom wants Steve to break and admit guilt. Another part recognizes Steve's sincerity. This tension makes Doom unpredictable, torn between seeking justice and craving understanding. The film explores trauma through their mirrored journeys. Steve carries survivor's guilt, Tony's death, and decades of impossible expectations. Doom carries multiversal grief and the collapse of his identity as a protector. Their conflict isn't battle-driven, it's trauma made tangible, responsibility made painful. Steve visits fragments of Doom's fallen universe, seeing remnants of Latveria, abandoned toys, and shattered landscapes. These visual memories force Steve to feel the depth of Doom's tragedy. It becomes harder for him to argue that his choice carried no consequences. The guilt becomes suffocating. But Steve discovers a crucial truth: Doom's universe was destabilizing long before Steve's displacement due to Doom's own experiments. The incursion wasn't caused solely by Steve. Multiversal stress points converged. Doom simplified his trauma into blame. It's not a lie, just an incomplete truth shaped by pain. Steve confronts Doom with evidence, and Doom doesn't deny it. He simply insists the timing of collapse still connects to Steve's choice. Even if my world was failing, Doom says, your happiness decided the moment it died. This gut punchline captures the film's emotional theme. Accountability rarely mirrors emotional blame. Their final confrontation echoes the Siberia fight from Civil War. Instead of rage, it's confession. Steve admits he never considered broader consequences. Doom admits he built his grief around blaming Steve. Neither yields. Neither surrenders. Both see their truths as justified. The physical clash becomes poetic brutality. Steve's shield meets Doom's armor while cosmic energy crackles. But every strike symbolizes emotional wounds. Doom fights to validate his grief. Steve fights to prove heroes can choose love without destroying worlds. Their fight becomes a multiversal echo of everything they once stood for. Steve breaks Doom's mask, revealing Stark's familiar eyes haunted and exhausted. Steve freezes, overwhelmed by Tony's ghost. Doom whispers, "This is what you took from me." The emotional weight nearly forces Steve to fall. Doom uses Steve's heartbreak as leverage, but something in Doom hesitates too. Steve rises and offers himself. "If my happiness cost your world, let my sacrifice rebuild yours." It's a callback to his first Avenger sacrifice, offering his life for others. Doom hesitates, shocked by Steve's sincerity. Steve's willingness to surrender everything for someone he barely knows shifts Doom's perspective. Doom pauses, realizing Steve embodies something Doom lost long ago: willingness to shoulder consequences. Steve isn't the selfish villain Doom imagined. This moment of recognition softens Doom's hatred, forcing him to question whether rebuilding through destruction is truly justice. The multiverse destabilizes around them. Doom chooses preservation over vengeance. He stops the Battleworld reconstruction project and uses his knowledge to stabilize collapsing timelines. Steve helps him, mirroring the rare unity Steve and Tony once shared. Their cooperation becomes the emotional closure Civil War never delivered. The climax isn't victory but acceptance. Doom acknowledges his grief can't be undone. Steve accepts his choices carry consequences beyond intention. Their story becomes Civil War 2.0, an ideological conflict elevated to cosmic tragedy. Instead of ending broken, they part with mutual understanding born from pain, not hatred. Avengers Doomsday ends with Steve silently carrying a new emotional burden, knowing the multiverse now reflects the complexity of his choices. Doom walks away, not redeemed but transformed, now seeing Steve not as destroyer but as flawed human capable of sacrifice. Their conflict shapes the future more than any war ever did. If you loved this breakdown, hit like, subscribe to FilmVerse Hollywood, and turn on notifications so you never miss another shocking Marvel multiverse theory.